Good morning, Ken. I'm talking to Ken Barish, who's the principal and owner of the National Wholesale Lending Group up in New Jersey. Good afternoon, Kenny.
How are you? How you doing?
Doing fine. Kenny's one of these people I've known for, I guess, maybe going on 15, 20 years now. And for those of you that don't know him, and Kenny is well known throughout the country. Kenny was, I'm afraid to even ask the numbers you did when you were producing, but Kenny was one of the top producers in the country for many years. And then, more importantly, when he became a national and very quickly a regional manager for several companies, was, I believe, producing over $1 billion a year way back when it counted for something. And you've owned your own company for some time now, and I'm sure you do one hell of a business. Kenny is one of the legends in the business, and certainly you got to rank up there with one of the top marketing people that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. And you know, we don't eat dinner, and we're not necessarily social friends and seeing each other, so I feel free to say that independently.
Anytime anybody says something nice about you, you always say thank you.
Yeah, right. Anyway, it is a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I think our listeners will too. But to get things rolling, I thought I would start by a common question in all my interviews, and people really want to know where people come from and how they got in the business, and how you got to do what you're doing now. So why don't we start kind of way back?
Well, that's when I started, way back.
I know, way back.
I started way back in the mortgage business when it was a requirement that, as a mortgage originator, I had to go to each and every piece of property, inspect the property, take pictures of the house, and anticipate all the repairs and the costs, and then come up with the selling price and the appraised value, and then come back to the office and complete an application. So that's...
You are old.
That is a long time ago.
That's before my time.
That was all FHA business, and that was one of our requirements. So I got into business primarily from a young man who was involved with a mortgage company in New Jersey, and I was selling real estate for an organization known as Kislak Real Estate. And unfortunately, they had their own mortgage department, and we were kind of always left out of the woods as to how it was all about. So I decided that I would try to find out what it was about, and approached this individual, and he allowed me to basically sit down and go through the mortgage process. And I was intrigued because I found out that the investors were paying us for mortgage loans. That was a real secret to me, John. And all of a sudden, it tweaked my interest to get out of waiting on corners for buyers, showing real estate, being what I consider to be a chauffeur, and deal with the mortgage, because without a mortgage, there's no transaction. And I was able to use my expertise in utilizing the mortgage programs and the investors in getting people into houses, primarily first-time home buyers and the FHA-VA arena. And I've been doing that for 37 years.
Yeah. When you started off, were you primarily doing govies? You're a New Jersey boy, right?
Yep, all FHA. When I started in the business, points were not allowed in the state of New Jersey, where I operated and lived. And so we were primarily mortgage bankers or brokers dealing in the FHA-VA market.
Could you charge points on the govies?
Well, yes, we could. We were exempt. And one of the advantages, I was the first Magic-approved lender in the state of New Jersey, because I read about it in a little book. And then I started charging fees for consulting fees to do conventional mortgage loans, and that's basically, I was the pioneer in getting points on conventional loans in the state of New Jersey. So I then started doing conventional loans as well, and I had that bailiwick to myself for about 3 years until people caught on what I was doing.
In the meantime, you made your escape and made your money.
You got it.
Well, eventually, to pick up to a time that I remember, your company got bought out at a pretty nifty price, if I remember, by... tell me, Broker's Mortgage.
Yes, we were affiliated with a company prior to that known as Kennedy Mortgage. And unfortunately, they had fallen on hard times and done some very foolish things. And there was a mad scramble to leave that company and make a affiliation. I made an affiliation with a company in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, known as Broker's Mortgage Service. And they've been in business since 1946 to 1947 as a small regional mortgage broker. And I operated the Northern New Jersey operation for them. And we grew it for about 4 years. And then we went public with the company, became a principal and an officer of the company. And about 3 months after we became public, we were acquired by the Travelers Insurance Company, and we operated for 9 years as the Travelers Mortgage Services for Travelers until they, unfortunately, as things happen in this business, as you know, John, changed. And Travelers decided to exit the mortgage banking business.
Yeah, but in the meantime, and I was a regional for Travelers for some time too. Right. But you were in a class all by yourself up there. I mean, you were doing numbers that were staggering for its time, and that kind of leads me into what were the things that you were doing that made you so successful? Because you were so much above everybody else that it wasn't even a contest, so there had to be a reason for that.
Well, the primary reason I've always believed, as opposed to a lot of other people, that the service is the nature of the business, and that's what we get paid. The rates and the fees and the structure of how it all works doesn't mean a thing. Providing the customer service and delivering is the name of the game. That's something that I've always tried to do, and I've supported the salespeople in my career over and beyond. I do have a very bad reputation, John, of people talking about me and saying, well, there's one bad thing when you work with Ken Barish. Whatever the salesmen want, they get. And that pushes people's buttons internally, and if a salesman brings an application, and I believe the company has a responsibility to process that loan, commit that loan, and get it closed as quickly as possible. And whatever efforts I need to do that within an internal operation is what I provide, whether it's additional manpower, whether it's a system, whether it's a bonus arrangement, fee arrangement, however I've been able to structure that to get people to motivate themselves to get the work done and provide that to the customer is really what I believe is the secret of the business. And when a loan officer brings a loan in that is qualified and it is properly taken, there's no reason why it can't conform to what your standards are as providing a customer service. And that's what I believe we have to do. Price, fees don't mean a thing. I've never been the cheapest on the street and never will be.
I happen to know you happen to have a pretty outrageous sense of humor, but I also know that you're tough as steel when it comes to managing. And one of the things that always struck me is that you always seem to have the top branch managers and always the top loan officers always seem to work for you. And I just wondered if you would go into it, the kind of qualities that, first, why don't we start with branch managers, the kind of qualities that you look for in branch managers and pretty much how you ran your ship?
Well, the most important quality I look for is a dedicated employee, somebody who is willing to go out and do the job. Financially, we all know if we do the job, we can be rewarded. So the biggest concern I have is people who are committed. This is not a 9-to-5 job. It's not a job that doesn't have its problems. The mortgage transaction is one of the most difficult transactions that individuals get involved with. So there's a lot of compassion and hand-holding and securing people's feelings that they're being taken care of in the mortgage process. So I look for somebody who has empathy, who understands that and can provide that level of security, and they are always available. I hate voicemail. I don't like beepers where they're not returned. So it's important for me to make sure that people understand when people call that by the end of the day they get a call back. So I look for people that are dedicated. That's a big key.
Was it hard finding them?
Yes. In today's environment, yesterday's is always tough to find people who are dedicated today. More so now in the environment that we're living in than in the past. I think the industry has changed considerably in regard to the quality of people that are in our business right now.
Why do you think that's so? I happen to agree with you, and I'm kind of curious on why that happens. I was talking to someone a couple of days ago, and they feel, and rightfully so, that there's not a lot of buzz about our business for people that are getting out of college looking for jobs, and yet this is a job where you can easily make a 6-figure income in a couple of years and really create an annuity income, which is the best income of all.
Well, the problem I think we face is that the industry has changed so much that the quality of people who are coming in are running the business. The salespeople have taken over, and creating the environment of getting the application. In the heydays of our business, the logo, the reputation of the company is what drove running the mortgage banking business. In today's environment, you have the individuals who are walking in demanding all kinds of fees, all kinds of requirements from the standpoint of what they want. They are providing the front-end service of the business of the application, as opposed to the lenders in our day, in the heyday, where we had the umbrella travelers and what have you. People came to us. We created that environment. Very difficult to do that today for the cost of doing business. So you have a different individual out there who is more of an entrepreneurial person, but it doesn't have all the skills, who's demanding a considerable amount of money for what I believe are services that are really not wanted. But he who has the application has the goal today. And you have to deal with those type of people in regard to putting them in a platform that can make money for them and for you.
That's kind of an interesting theory. But why do you think loan officers are not trained as well as they were in the past? That's very noticeable. I mean, you see comments from Neil Fenley, the new NAMB president, talking about education being his top priority. You hear this from the MBA and Freddie and Fannie of the lack of education in the industry. What do you ascribe it to?
There's no stability in the marketplace for the lenders themselves. The consolidation. The industry has given pause to people feeling that they're not going to be with their companies any longer. They have no future there. It's a stepping stone to go somewhere else. So a lot of them do not want to invest their time and money into a significant training program on the anticipation that they may not be there, they may be acquired, that people are not leaving. Very difficult to get people to be dedicated to stay for a company longer than a year and a half, 2 years. And that's a real problem today.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be that same kind of loyalty, and yet as tough as you can be as a manager, you always had very loyal people. I mean, your people stayed with you.
Yes, I was fortunate to have people with me for 15, 16. My secretary was with me for 24 years. But unfortunately, as the business changes and the thought process of the companies change, gives a different sight of where you want to go as a company as opposed to where the employees want to go. People are not, as the employees today, looking far enough in the future to look at a 401k or worry about it or look at their retirement with that company. It's a big problem today. There has to be a change in the attitude of these companies, that they are committed to the business, that they're going to support the people and give them a level of confidence that they feel that they have something for the future. That has not happened in the last 3 to 5 years, and it's still happening with the consolidation and the problems with the industry themselves as far as mortgage banking, quite honestly, is changed significantly. The aspiration of myself moving from a mortgage broker to a mortgage banker and doing all the things that I did acquire in those period of years that I operated my own company are no longer of value to me. I do not need that approvals, and I don't need that baggage or that liability. I can get them in a different venue, and that's what's changing this business. Technology, the approvals, the regulations, the inability of states to require the proper licensing and education. Anybody can basically be in the mortgage banking business or brokerage business by saying, here I am, here's my card. And it's a real difficult time for our industry in regard to what I believe is the professionalism issues and the ability to function intelligently. You
know, it's kind of proof positive of what you're saying. As you know, I know you read extensively. The Washington Post, for example, has had a series of articles over the last couple of months that Congress is now starting to get involved. And Freddie and Fannie and the MBA and NAMB are almost forming a strategic alliance because of this problem, just to try and get some of the bad apples out. And bring some education and licensing requirements to the industry, just for the reasons that you're talking about.
Right. Again, I can only tell you the quality of people that are out there are a lot less in quality and substance than we had 3 to 5 years ago from the standpoint of the individuals. The loyalty, the dedication to the job have kind of flown away from the industry in the last 2 or 3 years. We have to bring that back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and yet to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, I would think also, though, when it comes to a branch manager, if you can find and train and have a good branch manager who is a top producer and has really good qualities, that leadership kind of flows from the top down too.
Well, the problem that I've never had a branch manager that was responsible for producing business. I never felt that a branch manager who had to manage an office and people would have the time to dedicate to producing the quality of the office and the production with the conflict of having to do 3 or 4 loans a month. But that seems to be what's being required today, John.
Oh, 100% required.
So how can somebody split their time up if they're worrying about their own loan with a commission because they're on a very small drawer or no salary to run an office? It's very, very hard. Very difficult.
Well, that part, it's interesting that you hit that, because that part definitely has changed today, in that managers, 10, 15 years ago, none of them produced. Now virtually all of them are required to produce. And I've always contended that when you have a branch manager who has to produce, and one of the fallacies in the business, because the margins are so thin, a lot of the managers that are getting hired out there today are top producers, and as you and I know, that's a double-edged sword. They're bringing volume in, but doesn't mean they know how to manage worth of crap. And so you get a lot of managers out there that are good producers that are only concerned with producing their business, and the rest of the office, it just cannot get the kind of attention that...
I don't believe a salesman can be a manager. I never have. I never will. The business is too complicated today. The mechanics, the deals themselves today, the paperwork, the requirements take a lot more time to handhold somebody from the beginning of a pre-qualification to the settlement. To have people involved in managing other people. Yeah,
but what if I said to you, again, being a bit of a devil's advocate, that with margins so thin today, how was you going to do it? How can you pay a branch manager, a $90,000 plus some overrides? How can you do that in today's environment if they're not bringing some deals in?
They have to build an office. They have to build a network. They have to build an office of salespeople and go out just like other industries. Yes, John?
Let's talk a little bit about loan officers today. In the business that you're doing today, what are your loan officers? What are they concentrating on? Are you big on govies or dealing with realtors, or what kind of market niche are you dealing with?
Our market niche is to take a human being and a body, and find them and provide them with a mortgage loan. Whether it is a realtor, whether it's attorneys, whether it's title companies, whether it's old deals, whether it's telemarketing lists, institutional advertising, going to the banks and saying, give us your fallout.
Anyway, when talking about loan officers today, you say that it makes sense for a branch manager to attack all avenues of business?
He has no choice. You cannot rely on the realtors, because the realtors are in the mortgage business. We've been fighting those people since 1973 when RESPA came out. And the realtors have their own mortgage companies. They steer the buyer immediately. They give them a pre-qualification. So our ability has to be to focus getting the customer before he sees the realtor. My feeling is, which surprised me, is that the mortgage companies have not bought the real estate companies. And I think if you're going to see a change in the environment of our landscape, you may find that mortgage operations will start buying real estate companies.
That is very interesting.
Secure the product.
But wouldn't that create a legal RESPA problem here?
Disclosures. I don't think there's any problem today at all, because they're issuing enough disclosures, and you can do it with the disclosures. You have Sendit, and you have Schlott, you have Coldwell Banker, you have Weichert, you have Ravis, you have your folks down in your...
Long and Foster.
You got them, so I don't see any difficulty with it at all.
Well, what's happening with companies like Long and Foster, they are setting up the mortgage companies. In their case, they set up Prosperity Mortgage, which has been phenomenally successful. But do you see kind of the reverse happening, where the mortgage companies are going to go after the real estate companies?
Yeah, because the mortgage companies, remember who they are now. They're Countrywide, they're Norwest, they're the biggies, and they have the wherewithal, and they're now selling other products, and they may just walk around and say, you know what, let's just buy the real estate operations, and this way we have it all.
It's going to be interesting listening to this 7 or 8 years from now and see how this all fell through.
Less than that, John. I think the 3-year window, I think, is closer than you think.
That's a very, very interesting comment. First time I've heard it, but when you think about it, it makes absolute sense. As long as the disclosures are there, they found out, for example, in some of these high interest things where what they call them Section 32s, where you have to disclose. Not a problem. You can have disclosure a mile wide. People still sign the damn things.
People want the money. They want to go to the table, and they want to be treated properly. I believe you don't have to abuse the privilege of charging for your services, but I will not work for nothing.
And yet margins are so thin today.
Well, again, it's a question of service. People are being dragged around, and they're not getting the service. But you're finding technology moving quickly to provide people with access to approvals and all the other things that will come forth. And if you can do the volume, then you can live with a smaller margin. You may have to change your compensation to your loan officers in some other way, shape, or form to meet the marketplace, but I still feel that a loan officer, in spite of the internet and all these other things, is a very important factor in the mortgage process. But I think they have to look a little bit differently at how they function and what their compensation is and what the long view of their relationship with their employer, and that's a very big key today.
What exactly do you mean by that? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but do you think that, for example, loan officer commissions are de facto going to be driven down by the marketplace?
Yes, I think you'll find that the spreads, as you indicated, are less. I think that the industry will mandate a different kind of compensation, possibly getting into salaries and bonuses, like a lot of other industries has done, and that will give the people a sense of security, that they're here for the long haul, and it'll be driven on the quality of their loans and on the value of their loans, and they may receive a good portion of the origination through the company, as opposed to having to go out and do it themselves.
Interesting for changes coming on board. And yet, also, you look at the Internet. The Internet, as they have found out, is not really taking a huge amount out of the business, that they're using it like the car business really as a vehicle to get information.
The shopping network is what it is.
Right, exactly.
The process is still too cumbersome to operate efficiently over the Internet, even with all the enhancements, because the 1003 is still the most important document that has to be completed, and the honesty and integrity of that document is how we lend on. And we're still not getting through to the customer in a silent environment through the Internet without a personal interaction with people. So it's going to be a while until that happens.
It's still what you're saying really kind of boils down to certain fundamentals, and that is it's still a relationship business, it's a people business, and it's always going to be a relationship business.
Absolutely, without any question.
Don't you think? I mean, when you boil it down, that relationships are what it's all about.
Absolutely, it's been the business. The first day I got in business, gave somebody a card, somewhere they knew. They came to me because I did a job. And what I tell every salesman, every deal that you do that is done in a satisfactory manner is worth 6 deals down the line to you, from referrals or however you want to look at it. I think the problem with people today, they look at a deal and they I hate to use the expression, wham, bam, thank you, man. I think they forget that deal is just one little piece of what your future is if you can maintain a good relationship with that customer.
And there's people out there that are doing 100, 200 million a year, and that's exactly how they built their business, on relationships and by understanding that fundamental tenet. As you know, I've done over 60 interviews, and in that, the people who are really heavy producers, they understand that full well.
Well, the only thing I take offense to, and it bothers me, is being an individual. When they say these individual producers, I take offense to that, John, because they are not originating all that loans. They have teams of people. That never existed years ago.
Right.
When you originated loans, if you did 10 loans or 20 loans a month, that was a pretty good amount of business for you every day to be out taking applications face-to-face. And by the way, that's the way I still do business. I don't do business over the phone. Most of these high producers are able to get the application completed intelligently on the phone. They have groups of people that work with them and as part of their pods or part of their compensation program. So when you look at those producers, they're really companies within themselves as opposed to an individual. It's very difficult. I kind of smirk if I read all this, I closed $75, $80 million. Well, they didn't do it by themselves. And years ago, $80 million is a company. You get a company doing $80 million today. That's very good business. So you look at how that has changed from the standpoint of looking at those numbers. When you interview those people, they'll tell you that I have 2 or 3 people working with me. I take them on the phone. They call the people. I schmooze them. I give them the rate. I have a whole team that does that business. And that's how those people are able to produce a quality product and keep people happy.
Well, I mean, look what the realtors are doing the same thing. I know people out where I used to live in Great Falls, Virginia. They have 2, 3 people working for them, realtors now.
Right.
I mean, what's wrong with that?
That's right.
In fact, they're doing it the smart way.
Right.
They're paying these people $25, $30, or whatever the heck they pay them, and they're just leveraging off them. But on the other hand, these people, order the appraisals, they get the title work, the stuff so that the salesperson can get out there and concentrate on what you're talking about, service level and giving good service and, getting in front of them.
Exactly right. We all have the same investors. We all basically have the same pricing, okay? It's who can provide the people from the get-go, the service, from day one till settlement. That is where the mortgage banking business is. You live and die on that.
If you were a branch manager now or a regional manager and looking out into the future 3 or 4 years from now, do you think there's going to be a really a total, I mean, there already is the attempt for an end run around realtors to get to the consumer now. Do you think there's just going to be an overwhelming tide going right to that consumer and the realtors kind of be out of that decision process?
No, I think the realtors, unfortunately, the customer still relies upon a realtor for a lot of things in a comfort range, and when they make contact with that borrower, they're going to be able to be one step ahead of the individual as far as getting their information and giving them that pre-qual. I think it's going to be a tougher road down the street from the standpoint of grabbing that customer. I think we have to find other ways and other products and other venues to reach that customer, and we may have to work with the realtors. I've done that for years. I have a real estate license, and I work with the realtors. If I pre-qualify somebody, I take them to a realtor, and I try to make a deal with the realtor. So that's why I tell you we may see a melding of the industry between the mortgage people and the real estate industry. But they still control the customer at the point of entrance of looking to buy a home, and that's how they're able to garner a good percentage of the mortgage volume because of that.
So you think the realtors are still going to be big players in this business?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because there is a big end. People are trying to, the whole thing today, the raison d'etre of everybody is to go direct. Get to that client before they even, the moment after they think they ought to go out and look for a house.
Well, again, those are all the things you have to sit down and analyze from the standpoint of getting that customer and giving them what's not called a pre-qual but a pre-commitment, which is actually a fully processed loan.
Right.
I've been doing for 28 years. I process the whole loan in advance, exclusive of the appraisal. And then all they got to do is find the house.
Right. And that also has kind of a side benefit. One of the great benefits to doing business that way is that when you can deliver a customer fully approved to a realtor, then you really have a relationship for life.
Well, I used to charge them a fee. They were happy to pay me a 2% co-op fee. They would normally pay any other broker who brought them a customer. They pay 3% here in New Jersey. I get paid 2% as a referral. Now, you can offset that, as I did in many cases, to our closing costs, buy down the rate. That's one way that you can generate some business. You take what you make on the real estate and you give it back to the customer as an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
You're only interested in the mortgage.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, I'm going to terminate this a little bit early, but for a reason, because I know you have a call coming back. It's kind of unusual. I happen to know because we went off the tape, and someone listening to this will probably hear a little bit of a click, but I thought perhaps you want to maybe tell everybody the good news call. I mean, it's very unusual this happens.
I got a call from my son who just informed me that his wife is pregnant and they're expecting a baby, but I usually said baby, but unfortunately he just announced that he's having babies. So it was twins, and I don't have them in my family, so it is a very exciting thing in regard to getting this phone call, not only talking to you, John, but talking to
Which is always a pleasure, right?
Absolutely.
But, you know, it's funny, when we turned the tape off here, you had to take this call. I could hear you a bit in the background, the excitement and the screaming and everything.
Yes.
So I know you're real excited, and I know he's calling back.
Yes,
and I want to thank you so much, Ken, for talking to us, and we'll certainly keep in touch.
My pleasure.
Okay.